us. We'll start with questions today, and we'll go to Matt Wenzel from MLive. Matt.
Hey, Chris. With the makeup of your offensive line now, you got all 7 guys who started at least one game back from last year, and there's the depth behind them from the guys who appear to be next in the rotation. I was wondering what the outlook is for that group right now compared to this past season when you guys didn't have the full install like you guys obviously would have wanted to.
Right. First, I apologize for being late. That we typically don't have impromptu meetings here, but that happened, so I apologize for that. And yeah, it's well, the big word's competition. We definitely have some competition in our room, which is huge for growth and success. And that's something that I didn't feel like we had that across the board in the fall. And so, there's and I've told them this at the start of spring ball. In my mind, through our workouts, I see multiple guys that can start at each position. So there's nobody that's coming out here in this practice that has the job won. And it's critical that they understand that, because, you'd like to think every person, every player is going to just give everything they got every day, but it's human nature to get complacent at times. But when you know that if there's a guy behind you that can take your job and you don't have a good day, that's going to motivate you even more. And that's really what we're trying to get to here.
And maybe forgive me for some speculation possibly on my part, but with both tackles coming back and you bringing in Jarrett Horst and Kevin having the ability to play right guard where he started for 2 years, I guess, is there that potential to maybe look at move, Kevin back inside? Or I guess what's the outlook with tackle? Because you guys do have more returning depth at the interior spots, it seems.
Yeah, there's definitely a possibility of that, and I know it sounds like coach speak sometimes, but really you're trying to find the 5 best guys and then plug them in where you can. Obviously there's some guys that can't play tackle just because of their dimensions, but there's definitely some tackles that can move into guard. And so that's definitely a possibility. If we got 3 tackles that are 3 of the best 5 guys and we need to move one in and do that, we definitely can do that.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep.
Our next question is from Chris Solari with the Detroit Free Press.
Hey, Chris. Good to see you. Wondering kind of if you could break down 2 things. One, what you saw in kind of the recruitment process of Jarrett Horst to bring him in from across the divisions, and then also if there's any insight into Jordan Reed's decision to not come back.
Well, first with Jarrett, it's interesting. And his old line coach at Arkansas State, who was there, is somebody I've worked with before. So I did have once he went into the portal, it was nice to have inside knowledge there on what he's about. But you saw that on film pretty quickly, what he's about. And, finding those kinds of guys and those tackles, it's a premium. And there's a reason why he was in the portal and he was offered by Texas immediately. And then you had OU and Florida State and the people like that, everybody jumping in there because those guys are hard to find. And he played at a high level at Arkansas State. He plays with an edge. He finishes blocks, which you love to see because not all old linemen play that way naturally. And so, he's got 2 years, could possibly have 3 years. So those were all pluses, I thought, for him to come in here and compete for a job and add to our depth. And I felt pretty good off the film I saw and the people I talked to. His head coach there, Blake Anderson, and with Utah State, we worked together for 6 years. So I did have some good knowledge on him. So that made me feel better. Sometimes you recruit these transfers and it's so fast, you don't really know how much you know about them. But I was obviously able to talk to some people and feel like I trusted them. Jordan Reed, Jordan, he was definitely set to come back, and that was his thought process. And, he graduated, and I just think as time went on, he just felt in his mind, it was time for him to get in the workforce and start his career. And, I guess the burning desire to play in the NFL that maybe some kids have wasn't the same for him, taking care of his body and doing the different things. He wanted to just kind of jump in there. And, I got to respect that. We would have loved to have had him and had a chance to work with him, but I respect the decision he made. And, he came here and, your first goal when you come to college is to get your degree, and he did that. And so, and I wish him the best, obviously, and hope that he'll, stay in touch with us and come around and all that good stuff.
Our next question is from Lindsey Huddleston.
Hey, Coach, you kind of touched on it in your last answer. With the portal being a new experience for everyone, you get players and they have some great things, some great upside, but how do you plan on dealing with some of the things that are not in your coaching philosophy? I mean, in the perfect world, you get a kid as a freshman and you can grow him and mold him, but now you get a kid that may display some great pros, but there may be some cons that come out. And how do you plan on addressing that and dealing with that going forward?
Well, that's a good question. It's one thing if you get a transfer that's a freshman or sophomore, and it's another one if you get a senior. When I was at North Carolina, I had a couple seniors. I had the one kid was a 3-year starter at Florida at center, Cam Dillard. He's actually a Michigan kid, and he transferred in. And then I had Khalil Rogers who came in from SC. So you don't have a lot of time to necessarily develop them exactly in what you want. But, you get this. It's great getting them now. You got the off season. You as a coach maybe have a little more flexibility. And if this works for him, then that's okay. At the end of the day, you want your guys to get the job done. So even I as a coach sometimes have to be flexible, even with any guy I bring in. If this technique works better for him than it does the kid next to him, then that's what I have to do. So first thing, is obviously they got to learn the system. So that's number one. They got to learn the communication. So there's no give there. Then when you start going into technique, there's certain techniques I teach that there is no negotiation. And so we're going to put all the time we need to get it done. And then there may be some things that they do are a little bit different, but if it's working for them, then there's no reason for me to change it. And that's the best way. If this kid's better than the other guys, it's my job to find a way to make him comfortable where he can play and excel. And that's kind of how I look at it.
Great. Thank you.
Our next question is from Jim Comparoni with Spartan Magazine.
Hey, Chris, thanks for taking time out to do this with us. We really appreciate it. Hey, you mentioned earlier that there's more competition across the board at this point, maybe than there was in the fall. Can you give us a name or two that maybe have risen up from the reserve level that have helped create that competition, that have been on the rise thus far through the winter or the spring?
Well, as far as risen up, it's probably a little hard because, our first day of pads are tomorrow.
Okay.
You just take for granted, or you look at the instance of Matt Allen starting center of the first game. He hurt his foot, missed the season. Nick Samac started the rest of the season. So now they're both back. Well, there you go. There's great competition. You got 2 returning guys that have started that both want to own that job. You got a guy like Buter, who him and JD both started games. Buter got hurt after game 2 and really didn't get back to himself throughout the rest of the season. So now you got 2 guys that started games that are competing there. Like I said, you bring a Jared Horst in, and that adds competition at tackle. I do feel like a Spencer Brown is improving, which is very important for us at tackle. And so, and the young kids like an Ethan Boyd that's just here, I know there's going to be a maturation process for him. I just want him to start understanding the fundamentals and go from there. But, you take a Matt Carrick, you got a guy like Jarvis that could play guard and tackle. So now you got competition really both places. So just from guys getting playing time that they didn't necessarily have is creating that competition.
Sure. AJ Arcuri has come back. He's a guy that's kind of stair-stepped through his progression as he's gotten older. What do you see for the next level of development for him? What can he improve upon, and how excited are you to have him back?
I'm really happy to have him back. I really feel like he may have improved the most of anybody last season, from where he was when we started fall camp to where we finished the season. And, he's still got a lot of work, and he knows that, and he works his tail off. I mean, he's a great kid. He's humble. He works. When he walks off the bus, that's what you want him to look like. There's no question about that. And so I just think he's got to continue to progress in his pass protection part of the game, his physicality in the run game. And those are things really, the O-line world, it's you can throw on an NFL tape and those guys are still trying to figure out, you're still working at getting better at technique and doing those things. That's a constant strive for perfection, And so he wants to get his whole game amped up, but I really feel like he's made some strides and improved. And I'm hoping hoping that continues throughout the spring and summer.
All right, one more, if I may. James Ohanba is a guy that got into the playing group a little bit on special teams last year, caught the eye of some fans out there because hadn't seen much from him, and all of a sudden he's on the field. Tell me how he's coming along and the progress he made last fall and where he is at this point.
Yeah, James also progressed, and James got a little playing time at guard, which was good. He got a chance to be out there and taste it as you will. And so now he's out there and he's running with the twos and competing for a starting job. And again, another guy with the physical tools that you want. He's really transformed his body from what he was when he got here to where he is now. And I really think if James just finds a way to continue to improve, that he's a guy that can help us at some point this year in his career. So, he's one that I'm keeping an eye on, pushing daily, because I do see some things in him that I think he can help us.
All right. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Our next question is from Rainer Saban with the Detroit Free Press.
Hi, Chris. You guys have added, I guess, three guys in the 2022 class, offensive linemen. How much are you on the same page with Mel about just building the team from the inside out?
Oh, we're definitely on the same page. We know that, you need every position, but you got to have those guys up front. He knows it starts in the trenches on both sides of the ball. We have a blueprint that we both agree with. We like to have big guys. We like guys that are athletic. So it's good when you're working with somebody that you kind of see eye to eye with. And when we're recruiting guys and we're evaluating them, for the most part, we're on the same page. So I really, and it helps there too, because he understands how important it is. So, he's not a head coach that just recruits quarterbacks. He's in there recruiting those old linemen as well and those families. And so I think those kids and parents can tell that the head coach, it's important to him, that he understands the value of those linemen, and that makes my job even easier. So I feel like we got a lot to sell here at Michigan State, and I can't wait till we can actually get kids on campus. But we're definitely see eye to eye in what we want to do there.
Yeah, and how long do you think the process usually is to kind of build an offensive line to where it is? I mean, obviously, you guys were challenged last year with all the stuff that you dealt with, but to get to that point where things are kind of where you want them, how long does that process usually take?
Well, that's a good question, because you want it to happen now. I want it to happen now. I want it to happen this season. There's not a day in my life that I feel like it's okay because we got time to get these guys better. It's got to happen now. So I coach that sense of urgency, and I want our guys to train that way. I know if you took a blueprint of a freshman coming in, very few freshmen old linemen can play as freshmen. Occasionally it happens, but when you get to a point where you have some depth, you can bring a kid in and redshirt him, and then he plays as a redshirt freshman, and then he's a starter for 3 years. That would be a successful journey to me for an offensive lineman. But, the reason you bring in a transfer, you're trying to make sure we're ready to go this fall. And I feel like with the guys that are coming back and some pieces we have coming in, that we should be at a much higher level than we were last year. So my time frame is today. We got to get it done. We got to get better tomorrow in practice and go from there.
Thank you.
You bet.
Next question is from Audrey Dahlgren.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for doing this. I'm glad that you kind of brought up Ethan a little bit, just in a sense, because you want him to work on the fundamentals, as you were mentioning. But how has his progression been since he's got on campus? And then what do you want to see from him by the time spring ball is over with?
So when we first got here, he was the only person that I saw, only recruit I've seen in person since I've been here. Matter of fact, he came the morning of the 12th, and that afternoon's when we shut everything down. So I got a chance to see him. Our concern at that time was you saw this long, thin frame that was pretty athletic. I haven't watched his basketball tape, and you're like, can this guy carry the weight? Does he have a big enough frame? And that's something you really want to see in person. He came in that day, and I think he weighed like 263. So you're like, okay, we can build that up. Well, I think after he was here a month, he was 328. So putting the weight on was not an issue for him, obviously. In fact, we're pulling him back a little bit. That's the problem with the dorm and the cafeteria being connected. He's got the world's biggest kitchen. So, he can't keep going back for seconds and thirds. But, I joke around with him, but he's a great kid. He wants to be a good player, unbelievable attitude. And he's got good feet. He can bend. And sometimes he looks awkward as can be because he's trying to learn what I want. But it's always amazing how he gets there. And, and that's not the same for all kids. So as a staff, we're really excited about what he's going to become because he's a big, long human. I mean, when you get those tackles that are 6'7", 325, you'll see him even in the NFL where technically they're not as where you quite want them, but it's hard for people to run around him and through him. So we're excited about him because he does have the athleticism, and I think he's going to be a really good player for us. So my hopes are at the end of this spring ball, he understands our offense. He understands the techniques I want, and then he can take what he's learned from the spring and improve for the summer, and then he can laugh at all the other freshmen that come in that summer and are trying to figure it out.
Thank you.
You bet.
We have time for a couple more. We'll go back to Chris Solari.
Chris, in your role as the run game coordinator, I mean, obviously you brought in Jared, but you also brought in running back Kenneth Walker. Excuse me. What have you seen early with him, and what did you see on his tape that makes him fit the blocking schemes that you guys want to do and the type of downhill running you need? Right.
Well, first of all, Kenneth, again, great kid. He's come in here and the team loves him. And, again, we haven't had a scrimmage yet. You run plays against each other, but there's no disappointment. I can tell you that. And it's not just noticed from us, it's noticed from his teammates. He can go, he's got vision. He can cut. He can put his, head down and get those tough yards. And we think just from watching his film from Wake Forest, I think from watching his film at Wake Forest, the one thing you saw in a short season, he scored 12 touchdowns, and there obviously he can get to the end zone. He understands that. He played a little wildcat quarterback for them, which was just showed, something about him there, even just mentally to be able to line up and handle that, and just talking to people around that area, what they felt. The people at that school loved him, but you saw from him on film that he had the patience for the zone game, and he had the vision to get to the right spots. But he also, you're seeing him against good competition. When he breaks free, he's outrunning people as well, which is a great combination. So we're really happy to have him, and I think he's going to do some really good things.
One year in, I mean, on the recruiting trail, I mean, how do you kind of identify the running backs that you guys want for the future of the program?
Coach Pigler, our running back coach, he heads that up and he does a great job. And, I think in a perfect world, sometimes you get combinations of guys, right? You might have that one guy that's not the big back, but he's a home run threat. You might have the guy that's a 200+ pound guy that shows he can run physical and get the positive yards in traffic, and he runs good enough. And so, you got to figure out what you have in your room. If you have one or two that can do it all, that's great. That's not always the case, but if you got a couple big guys that are physical runners, you don't have the home run threat, then that's what you're looking for. I think about my past. I was at North Carolina and I had TJ Logan and Hood. Hood was a big physical, violent runner. TJ Logan can fly, and then even the Michael Carter and Javonte Williams, we brought them in there before we left, and you see what they're doing now. So you can have those kind of, people say thunder and lightning type thing. You're still looking for the guy that can do it all. But if you don't have that, you just got to piece it together. And I think that's what Coach Pigler is trying to do.
We have a couple more. We'll go to Matt Wenzel, them live, and we'll wrap it up with Rainer Saban. Matt?
You just touched on Kenneth and kind of what you're looking for in different guys in the room. But I think even with Brandon moving to defensive end, still got 5 scholarship running backs on the team right now. Got a commitment from another transfer, got a freshman coming in, Davion Prim. When you've got that many guys and only so many carries, how tough is it to balance? Just everybody wants the ball, everyone wants to be the guy, but that obviously isn't the case just based on the numbers.
We go back to that word of competition, right? If it's got to happen now. Spring ball, summer, fall camp, those guys got to show that we're better with them on the field. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Are we better with you on the field? And, that's Coach Piegler. That's part of it. Being a running back coach, receiver coach, those types of guys, is managing those egos too is a big part of it. And he does a tremendous job with those guys. And, at the end of the day, it usually plays out through practices and workouts and fall camp of who the most productive guys are. And you go from there. And, it's a different world we're living in this transfer portal. It's as much as you're recruiting ones to come in, you can easily have ones coming out. So it's you got to be prepared. You got to have good depth, and then you got to manage them and get the best guys out there. And, there's always a place for 2 or 3 backs for sure to get in a game. And then you got to have some guys ready to go when there's injuries, which we know is all part of the game.
Thank you, Chris.
Our final question will go back to Rainer Saban.
When you did the self scouting after the season, what did you diagnose, I guess, as the biggest issue with the running game? And do you think the strength and conditioning program, being the second year, could really kind of make an impact in that area?
Well, first, strength and conditioning they're doing a tremendous job. We're already bigger and more athletic, which is great. Missing all that in the spring, and then we had the summer we had to shut down and stuff. That was not good, obviously. So that's going to be just having an off season. We're going to be better. Going through and watching the fall, it was tough because I've been doing this a long time, and that was the least productive offense I've ever been a part of, and it was hard to digest. And it wasn't from a lack of these kids trying. I just think trying to put it all together in this COVID era with the lack of reps we had and the things we couldn't do, it just didn't mesh all the time. You saw flashes, right? Northwestern just sticks out to me. We made a decision. We're going to be physical. We're going to run the ball. We're going to control the clock and win this game. And we did it. The kids did it. And you're inconsistent. And it really, it'd be easy if you could just say it's just that position. But there was things across the board. When people think about the run game, the first thing they think about is the O-line, which is correct, right? But then is your back actually going to the right place? Is he taking advantage of what's supposed to happen? Sometimes that doesn't happen. Our teams blitzing you, stunning and suffocating you to where you can't block them all, and then the ball should be thrown out to keep them honest. Now that's on the quarterback, right? Or does it get to the right check? So there's a lot of pieces that go with this. And at the end of the day, we just weren't consistent enough across the board, and it all starts with us. So consistency, understanding the scheme, and just us getting better from all these practices we're going to get, these workouts, we're going to get better just off of that. And so I'm excited to see that improvement.
Thanks.
Sounds good. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Coach, we really appreciate your time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks, Chris. Take it easy.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.